That's what we were standing up for. Israel's future is a Jewish and democratic state, living side by side in peace and security with its neighbors.
Israelis do not need to be lectured about the importance of peace by foreign leaders.
Secretary of State John Kerry responding to Israeli criticism of the U.S. abstention from a vote condemning Israeli settlement construction, saying it was in the interest of preserving the two-state solution, to which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed disappointment. It is time now for our Sunday group. Washington Examiner contributor Lisa Boothe, Democratic strategist Julie Roginsky, Daniel Halper, the New York Post Washington bureau chief, and Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. All right, we're going to get to Israel, but I want to start with Russia. Lisa, we had this response from Putin saying, I could respond in kind. I'm not going to. We're going to wait and see what the Trump administration does.
Well, I think because he's waiting to see what the Trump administration does, because essentially these sanctions are meaningless once President Obama leaves office. And I think what's really interesting here, and I think part of the reason why we've seen Donald Trump react the way that he has, is because this is clearly very politically motivated by President Obama. Even the New York Times has tipped its hat to saying that, they very much question the effect of these sanctions. And I think it's very much being done to, one, delegitimize Donald Trump's victory, and also to try to box him in on Russia as well in foreign policy as he comes into office. And so, I mean, you look at the fact that Russia had hacked the Joint Chiefs of Staff, unclassified email server, 4,000 military and civilian personnel. Also, the fact that China hacked compromised 22 million Americans' security information, as well with OPM, and what was the reaction from the president? But somehow this is what elicited a response from President Obama. So I think Donald Trump's looking at this and thinking that it's very much political.
Well, and Daniel, does it create an issue for his nominee for Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, in that he's been very vocal against sanctions, saying in many cases they don't work, and obviously lobbying against them where they would affect Exxon's business interests, where he is currently the CEO. Now he's going to have to answer more questions about that, it seems, going into a Senate confirmation hearing.
Certainly. I think you can expect Democrats on Capitol Hill to request all communications between him and his company and Russia, and for the last 10 years or something extraordinary, where you're going to try to get as much information out of him as possible. This is going to be a real issue going forward. I think it's not just that President Obama and President Trump are positioning. You can see in the response by Vladimir Putin and by Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, you're seeing world leaders really shift their attention. They no longer take President Obama seriously. They no longer, with the Israel action, there are real consequences, of course, with the UN vote, but they're no longer so concerned about that. You really see them shifting their attention toward President-elect Trump and treating him as though he is the president, and it's really altering foreign policy and really handcuffing President Obama at a time when he's trying to handcuff President-elect Trump.
And to that point, we have a couple of tweets that went out from Donald Trump talking about Israel. Just days ago, he said, "We cannot continue to let Israel be treated with such total disdain and disrespect. They used to have a friend in the U.S., but not anymore. The beginning of the end was the horrible Iran deal, and now this UN, exclamation point. Stay strong, Israel, January 20th is fast approaching, exclamation point." The Prime Minister tweeted back, "President-elect Trump, thank you for your warm friendship and your clear-cut support for Israel." Charles, also with an exclamation point.
Yeah, there's a new sheriff in town, without doubt. I thought that your interview with Senator Cotton was very interesting. He did a very good job of sort of going through all of the transgressions that Russia and Vladimir Putin has committed against the United States over the past 8 years. And the timing, as you all said, the timing of this is very curious. The fact that that finally the president has his dander up enough to do something about it. And I think that the sanctions have very little to do with Vladimir Putin or Russia, and they have everything to do with Donald Trump and trying to set up something where, when Donald Trump comes in, is he going to reverse this? And if he reverses this, how much political capital does he have to spend to do that? How much does it hurt Rex Tillerson? And how much does that give Democrats sort of a political cudgel to use going forward against the Trump administration?
Julie, what do you make of the criticism that although a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle are praising it, they say it's too little too late?
Well, first of all, it is too little too late, and I'll be the first to say and I say this as a liberal, Tom Cotton was absolutely right in what he said to you this morning about how lax and how belated these actions are. I also would say this is not so much that Democrats are driving this. The two biggest forces on the Hill who are driving this are Senator McCain and Senator Graham, neither of whom is certainly a liberal or a Democrat. It does box the president-elect in the following way. It seems to be a bipartisan consensus that you're going to have to do something much stronger than the Obama administration did to retaliate against the Putin regime. And for the president-elect to say, well, it's time to move on, as he did this week, and let's focus on other things, going to be much harder to do when you have Republicans and Democrats, but specifically Republicans like the Senate chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Senator Graham, and others, Senator Cotton certainly, all of whom believe that these sanctions, as I do, don't go far enough and that you need to do something much stronger to punish Putin and his inner circle. What does the president-elect do, and what does potentially Secretary of State Tillerson do in response to that kind of bipartisan pressure that's going to be put on him in January?
No, and I agree, and I don't mean to in any way downplay the importance of this, except that, you know, I wish the president had done much earlier. But you know, President-elect Trump did make a key part of this election about this effort to work with Vladimir Putin to combat terrorism. And I agree that the guy is he's an unsavory character, and I don't want to. I would like it if we didn't have to do anything with him. But that was that was a major part of his campaign, was to do that. And if that's what how he wants to focus that relationship, I don't know that it's been settled, at least.
All right, but may I say something about that real quickly?
Sure.
Because you have the president-elect coming in saying he wants to work with Vladimir Putin. In 2000, George Bush came in and said, I looked in Vladimir Putin's eyes, I saw his soul. You had Hillary Clinton with the reset. He will learn very quickly, I hope, as his predecessors did on both sides of the aisle, that this is not a man we can work with, that this is a man that will exploit every single weakness that he perceives the president to have in order to further his own agenda economically, domestically, and internationally. And as a result, the faster the president-elect understands that this is not somebody you can work with to stem terrorism, when he, in fact, is fomenting terrorism in places like Syria by working with Iran overseas, is the faster that happens, the faster the president-elect can get on with actually punishing Putin for what he has.
I want to make sure that we touch on Israel as well and what happened at the UN. From Facebook, we have Hal Woodstein, who said, what possibly did the Obama administration believe they could accomplish by taking this action less than a month before the newly elected president takes over? Lisa.
Well, I mean, he's changing U.S.-Israeli policy, essentially. That's what's happened from this UN resolution. It's going to be very difficult for the United States to try to reverse it. So I think President Obama is trying to leave a lasting legacy regarding foreign policy by the abstention from that vote. But I think what's deeply disturbing is Secretary Kerry had said during his speech that the abstention is representative of U.S. values. And I think that really underscores sort of the distorted viewpoint of the Obama administration and their foreign policy throughout President Obama's presidency, in the sense that even Steny Hoyer has said that the resolution tips the hand of the Palestinians. So we are essentially tipping the hand of, you look at the Palestinian Authority, and 10% of the budget goes towards supporting and paying terrorists and their families. The same to be said for the fact that you look at the Iran deal, lifting sanctions for Iran, helping Iran rebuild their economy. Again, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So I think in view of the Hamas spokesperson who is saying that they appreciate the resolution, who's praising the resolution. So I think it is deeply disturbing that President Obama and this administration thinks that is representative of American values, when we have repeatedly propped up and helped these countries that support terrorism around the country, but yet we turn our back on Israel. We turn our back on our friend. And as Benjamin Netanyahu said, this was an ambush attack, and he called it a declaration of war. And I find that very deeply disturbing, that somehow the administration thinks this is representative of American values, because it is not.
Quick final word to you, Daniel.
The Obama administration is not delusional enough to know that this will suddenly bring about Middle East peace. It is about changing the direction of the Democratic Party, repositioning President Obama's legacy, and repositioning the Democratic Party going forward.
All right. And we'll talk about the Democratic Party with the panel when they return, but we've got to take a break here.